Hi, this is Gina Pierce, Tech Coach for SB Unified, and I'm going to show you how to use the webinar feature in Zoom. So before you get started, one thing you might want to consider is whether you're going to need language interpretation. So you're going to want to go ahead and enable that in your overall settings in Zoom to start. So when you log into Zoom, go to the settings tab on the side. And you want to scroll down. I believe it's in meeting advanced. That'll kind of help you scroll down a little bit quicker. And you want to make sure that you have language interpretation toggled on. So make sure you have that if you are going to use that within scheduling your meeting. So after you've done that, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to go back to the main menu. And if you scroll up to the top, you should have a tab that says webinars on the side. Before you had meetings, you should have webinars enabled so you can actually schedule a webinar. So you're going to click on that, and then you're going to go ahead and schedule a webinar. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to walk you through the process. It's super similar to scheduling Zooms, so you're just going to be having a webinar instead. So I'm going to call this test webinar.2 because I've already been testing it before doing this screencast. You can put a description just like a regular Zoom meeting. You're going to put in the time and the date and all that, duration. And then it's basically all the things that you want to have, whether you want a passcode. If you're doing this for parents, it's probably easier not to have the passcode. This would be for something that's more protected. So I would have both your video and anybody that you promote to a panelist, their video on. You can decide. Usually your panelists, if you're running kind of a parent presentation, would be your other admin that are going to be there. So you'd want to have that visible to parents. So I'm going to have both of those on. The audio is going to be both. Q&A is super important in a webinar. This is the way your audience communicates with you. So this is a place where parents or others attending can actually ask questions, and this will help guide your discussion and things that you want to cover in your presentation. So definitely have that. You decide whether authenticated users can join. That means only SB Unified. If you're doing this for parents, again, you're not going to want to have that checked. And then the alternate hosts, you probably will not need to add anyone just because you can promote anybody to a panelist, which will then be able to present. So don't worry about having that feature. And then if you're going to enable interpretation, this is where you are going to be putting in the interpreter's information. So I'll just choose my personal, and I'm going to do English to Spanish, and then that will, when they join in, they can be your interpreter. So that's pretty much it. So you schedule it. There you go. Now, the next part of this, the scheduling that's different than the actual meeting, is there's a lot of features that you can actually have to a webinar. And so the two things that I'm going to be going over are polls and the Q&A. So first thing that you want to do is for the Q&A, remember this is how your audience communicates with you, because you will not they won't be videos of all of them. They won't be able to just talk. This is like a one-sided conversation. This is a presentation with people joining. You're going to want to set up your settings for the Q&A. Like, do you want to have anonymous questions? Allow people to ask questions anonymously. So I can edit all this. You can check and uncheck things, allow attendees to view. So I like to usually have all questions. I like them to see all the questions that other people are asking. I think it's important. I, as a teacher, like attendees to be able to upvote. And what I mean by that is when I'm first saying, hey, put your question into Q&A, I say, if you see a question that's already there, you don't need to actually ask it again, just upvote it. And that means I know as a teacher that more than one person have that question. So if I see a lot of upvotes on a question, then I'm ready to go and say, I have to address that in this webinar. And then you can allow attendees to comment if you want. If you decide like, I'm not sure if I want this or not, or if you want to change it later, you can when the meeting is going. You have that option. So check out the Q&A. I'm going to save this for now. The other thing that I highly recommend is the polls. Polling your audience is a great way to get feedback. You can do icebreakers, which I highly recommend when you're doing webinars with an audience. So going to polls, right now I don't have any. You can add a poll. And so how it works is you would create a title. So let's say I have icebreakers. These are all the questions that I would have as an icebreaker. So it'd be at the very beginning of my presentation, maybe even a question before the presentation is officially started. There's lots of options that you can have. These polls can be anonymous or not. So if you want to have it be anonymous, you can check that box. Otherwise, it will state who said what. So for example, if I was going to do like a back to school night or something like that, I would say, how long have you been a parent, P-A-R-E-N-T, at this school? This would be a question to kind of see who your audience is. So answer choices would be, I'm a newbie. I could say 1 to 3 years, and so on. So after you put in the rest of your responses, then you can press save. And you can also add more questions. So if I knew I wanted a bunch of icebreakers, so up here, this is like the topic. This is what's going to hold all of your questions. You can add as many questions or icebreakers as you want. So I'd add another question doing the same thing. I'm going to hit save. And so if you can see, I have my polls all right here, and it says there's only one question in that poll. I can edit it and add more. So the next one might be the during presentation, and so on. And then I'd have more polls. So we'll go over the side of what it looks like when you're actually presenting. You want to know what questions are where, especially when it's on the fly. So this is kind of organizing your questions for you. So you'd add your question. It can be multiple choice, single choice. So they can select more than one if you want. But that's basically how it's going to go. I'm going to hit delete, but you have the idea. If you want to at any point make changes to the original webinar, you can go ahead and hit edit this webinar. It'll bring you back to where you had titled it. You had set up all of your settings here. You can also save this webinar as a template so that when you create other webinars, it has all the same things on it. So there's those options for you. You just need your webinar link. So if you go to invitations, the tab at the bottom, this is what you would then go ahead and copy. You would go ahead and share this on your website or wherever you were planning on getting the information out for your webinar. When you're ready to start this webinar, you can either start it right here from the page right away, or most likely you're going to be re-logging in where you're going to be looking at your meetings and all of that. So you can see meetings. You just click on that webinar tab and you will see your webinar that you can start. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Open up in Zoom. And here we go. So what we'll be doing is at this point, you're going to see all of your controls just like you would if this was a regular Zoom meeting. You will see the interpretation, the Q&A here, and all of that. I like to have these open, the Q&A, so I can see questions that come in. Remember, this is the way your audience is communicating with you. I also like to have my participants tab open as well. So right now I don't have any attendees, but I should have some soon. You'll notice your interpretation tab down here. I have an interpreter that I had wanted to join. They haven't joined yet. And when they join, you'll see them there. And then you can start the interpretation whenever it's necessary. Most likely you're going to actually be mirroring your screen, so it won't just be your face here like mine. That's going to be the main presentation. So you're going to be going straight to that screen share and getting your presentation ready to go. So I'm going to share my screen. Most likely you'll have your slides presentation up at that point, and you're ready to go with your presentation. Again, your toolbar is not at the bottom anymore. Once you're sharing your screen, it actually hides up at the top. So this is where it's going to be. Even though you're sharing your screen, this Q&A box cannot be seen by anyone. It looks like my participants have gone away. I like to always have those available because I can promote people to panelists. So what I can do is from this point, I can see that I do have one attendee. So you're going to see this number change. You can click on that. I usually have it always on that. And you can make your attendees be a panelist at any time. You can ask them to talk. So I would allow them to talk. I'll see if that works right now. And so they're going to be prompted to be unmuted, but they can talk. And then I can also promote them to a panelist, meaning that they're going to see all of the tools, the Q&A, they'll have the polling feature, they're going to have all of that. So I can promote them to a panelist as well, especially if I have maybe admin joining me that are doing the presentation. It's nice to have them as well. So I can promote her to a panelist instead of just being able to talk. Hi, Kylie.
Hi.
And so she will have all of the tools that I have available once I make her a panelist. One of the advanced features that you might use when you have all of your panelists ready to go for your presentation is under More. You're going to see some of the basic ones that you have with the regular meeting. You can allow them to rename themselves or not. But if you keep scrolling down, this is going to give you the view of how you're going to actually see all of the people that are on your webinar. So you can have the gallery view where everybody is viewed kind of in a grid. You can just have them follow the host view. So whoever's the host, or they can just be the only person that is displayed when they're speaking. So you have some flexibility in terms of how the people or the panelists are viewed in your actual webinar. So just be mindful of that. And that's just by clicking on the panelist tab. You have those controls. I can move her back to just an attendee at any point. So that's how you're going to basically have co-hosts, if you will, is you're just going to promote them to a panelist as needed if you're going to have more than one person delivering the presentation with you. You'll notice that in the Q&A, I do have a question that came up. So Kylie is asking, how will students receive iPad support? If you have somebody as a panelist that's kind of manning this with you, they can type in the response. And so you may never get to it live, but someone can type responses if you have someone kind of helping you out. Otherwise, you can just answer this thing live and be like, I see a question came in. How will students receive support? You can just answer that live. And so there's lots of ways that you can do this, but having the Q&A window open and your participants window open is huge. So, and again, I told you that you can change the settings on these at any point. You can go to settings, and maybe you don't want to allow anonymous questions, or you want people to be able to comment. You can change that right there on the fly as you're presenting. And then also here for the attendees, you can ask people to raise their hand, and people can raise their hand on their screen. You can lower all the hands once you kind of get a response. So there's that feature as well. Moving on to some of the other things, the polling. Remember how we made our poll? This was the icebreaker poll. I can have allow panelists to vote on this as well or not. But when you're ready to launch the poll, you're giving your presentation. You can be like, all right, I'm ready for my icebreaker. You launch the poll. And again, participants do not see this screen. This is only you. You're going to have people vote. and then I can see the votes live as they're coming in. And then when I'm ready to end the poll, I just hit end poll, and then I can share the results out with my attendees, or I can relaunch it if I want. So when I share the results, everybody's screen gets the actual results, which is nice. So there's the polling feature. Okay, so when you're ready to end the meeting, there's two ways you can do it. You can go up to that top bar and you can go to more and you can hit end meeting right here, or you can stop your screen share and then you can hit end meeting, or just end, just like you normally would for a regular Zoom meeting. So that's pretty much the basics. There's obviously more to it, but in terms of things that I think that you guys will be utilizing, I think that's the main thing. So go ahead and play around with it. It's your chance to play around with it and bring back questions for me, and I'll be here to support you with anything that you need. Thanks everyone for joining.